So welcome back to the show. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a new direction today, and I'm interviewing Marc Warnke from packgoats.com. And honestly, the background with how I ran into Mark is I just ran into his profile on like I think a backpacking page on Facebook or something, and he was hiking with goats, and I never even seen that before, and I thought that was like super cool. So I wanted to invite him on the show and get to know about his lifestyle a bit more because I thought he had like a really cool lifestyle as well, and more about like pack goats and hiking and hunting and all that other stuff. So welcome to the show, Mark. It's good to see you. We spoke like I think a few months ago. I asked like a few questions about the trips you offer and all that stuff, but it's good to finally like see you on camera and kind of have an opportunity to chat with you today. So welcome.
Super. Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what got you into doing like getting into pack goats and doing all that stuff?
Well, so my family was young at that time, and so my kids were little. My wife is a little, or my ex-wife now, but so maybe it didn't work so well. But she was little physically, right? So she weighs 110, 115 pounds, and I go into the backcountry a lot, hunting and scouting, and you got to carry a lot of weight, 50 pounds minimum, and it doesn't matter if you're a little lady, you still kind of got to carry that. That's like that base level of equipment. And yes, you can get down to ultralight stuff at 35, but to do 10 miles a day, being 115 pounds and or being a little kid, it was really difficult to find a way to take the people I love most in the backcountry. So I started exploring different stock options, and I've had experience with llamas and horses, and frankly, horses are just dangerous. It's a guarantee somebody's going to get hurt sometime. It's just the nature of horses. They're expensive and they're dangerous. And llamas are super expensive, and they're a crazy bad pet. They have like -5 personality, right?
Okay.
Yeah, if they let you touch
At least they're
them,
not at a zero.
right, right. They are just not a cool animal. They're very weird. And expensive. And so goats came onto the radar as something that there was a small group of people doing in the United States. And I thought, cool, I had a goat when I was a kid. They were a cool critter. I didn't know they could do that. And then fast forward now 8 years, I think I'm probably one of the global authorities on how to run pack goats, and invented the gear and kind of next level training and breeding and everything else. It swept me up rather than me sweeping it up, I guess.
Well, how is this pretty common, or is this like something like a new trend that has started? Because I've seen donkeys being used, and obviously horses have been used for like, I don't know, hundreds of years, but I've never really seen like people using like a group of goats to carry like equipment or whatever hiking gear they're planning on carrying with them.
Yeah, it's super uncommon. So, when I started, there was maybe 20 people doing it in the United States. The first pack that was thrown on a goat to carry something for somebody was in 1971, and it was a guy named gosh, am I going to forget his name? Anyway, he's a scientist studying bighorn sheep in Wyoming, and he cut a 2x4 in half, and he cut a shovel handle in 4 pieces, wired it together with baling twine, hand sewed some duffel bags so it would work on it, and had his goat carry his equipment up the mountain, and said, wow, we got something here. And that's he was the grandfather of only him doing it till the mid 80s, and then some people picked it up, but it found a usefulness for an adult male goat over 1 year old. And so the farming community kind of grabbed onto it once it became a concept, and so they did it as a 4-H activity. So that's how I kind of think that's what breathed the life into it, to get it some exposure, is this 4-H community and these kids competing with these pack goats. And really they were just trying to give a 1 year old plus male goat a reason to live, because before that it was either a pet or butcher. It didn't really have a purpose in agriculture. And so we as a community now are in the thousands strong, and that really has only happened as terms of an acceleration in the last 4 to 5 years. And I think I have a large profile in the hunting community, and hunters are seeing it as a way to get deeper into the backcountry and successfully be able to pack out a big elk or a deer and hunt away from people, on remote backcountry wilderness areas.
Yeah, I always wondered with hunting how I never actually did any hunting myself, but like how you would actually carry like all that meat or the organs or even whatever else you decide to take from the animal like with you if you're out like way back in the back country. Is that like one of the ways?
It is, yeah. So if it's not that, it's a backpack, right? One of the concepts that people think is common is hunter waste, and it just isn't. We work awfully hard for the meat that hits the ground, and it tastes delicious and it's highly nutritious. So we work really hard to get that meat out, and I don't almost know anyone who won't. So there's really two methods. When you drop an 800-pound elk on the ground, it's difficult for two guys to roll him over, let alone carry him out or drag him
Hmm.
out. So you're going to cut him into pieces, right? So you're cutting off the quarters, front legs, rear legs, rib cage, back straps, which are the stag lines that run down the spine. And then the next level is to actually what we call bone and butcher. So you're fully boning off all the meat, and then you're packaging that in bags, and then you're packing it out in parts. So an elk, when he hits the ground, two very able-bodied, backpacking, strong guys, it's going to be two trips to get that elk out, no matter how deep you are. Right? You can't do it in one; it's too much. You end up with almost 300 pounds of meat off an elk, and 150 pounds of load is pretty hard in high
Hmm.
elevation, steep terrain. So almost everybody will do two trips. But I can pack out a full bull with my goats with four goats. So if I could have four goats there with me, they can pack it out. I put horns on my back, and boom, we're out. And they hunt along with me.
How do you keep the meat from spoiling? Like,
Yeah, that's a common question. In the high country at 8,000 feet plus, which is where we're hunting elk in September, the night times are always dropping, 30 to 45 degrees. And if you can get that meat down to sub 40-degree temperatures that first night, it's actually good in the backcountry for almost a week. You can
hmm,
keep it hung in creek bottoms and in shade, and make sure that you keep the sun off of it. And, it's just a part of the normal aging process actually for meat once you've got it chilled.
and like is it not common for other animals to come and pick it up while you're away on the first trip?
Yeah, the animals are going to be more attracted or smell more often things like rotting meat or guts. The guts stink. Rotting meat stinks. That's what things are going to more, be attracted to. So this year I shot my 29th elk with my bow. I've almost hung every single piece of meat, elk and deer. So that's over 50 animals in the backcountry. Over 30 years of hunting, I've never had one bear in camp disturb the meat, never once. But when I drop an elk on the ground, I pull all this meat off, and then I come back to visit that carcass. There's almost always a bear on that carcass within 24 hours. So that's a difference in the stink of clean, chilled, properly taken care of meat in a camp that has human stink in it too, which they're leery of, versus a dead elk on the ground with his gut spilled out,
Hmm.
right? So kind of give you a perspective there. And cougars and wolves they're very wary predators. They're super calculated. A bear is kind of a bumbler. He'll kind of come in and see what's up. A cougar, a wolf, they'll smell what's up from 100 yards. They'll observe for 3 days. Is it safe to move in? Then they'll move in. So they're a wary, cagey critter by comparison to the bumbler of a bear.
Gotcha. I
Yeah.
guess for anyone that's looking to kind of get into hunting, and I've been kind of looking into it as well, like, is there like a step-by-step progression of how to get into it? Because I presume like bow hunting is going to be like the most difficult out of like anything you can do. Is that right, or am I wrong?
For sure. Yeah, just the ability to be successful. So in Colorado, the densest population of elk in the world, the success rate with rifles in there in that 30 to 40% every year. With archery, it's 2 to 4%.
Hmm.
So it's just that much more difficult when you're limited to 40 yards versus 400 yards, in shooting distance and the ability to be accurate. It's not that hard to close 100 yards on a bull elk. It's super hard to close the final 60 to get into 40, right? That's where, the step on a leaf, one wrong step at 40 yards, everything's over. Where at 100, you can get away with stuff like that. So it's exceptionally harder. It's geometrically harder.
Gotcha. I wonder what Rambo's success rate is would be with the bow. Probably be like 99.9%. He's like,
maybe.
one arrow takes home like 10 animals that season, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, funny.
Well,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, so to answer your progression question, I have a company out there that I wanted to start pre-COVID, and we had the wheels rolling because, as a public figure in the hunting industry who's also watched by the animal loving community, I'm like, because goats, right? I mean, that's the part that people don't get. Your viewers or the people that are in the general public, only 7% of the United States has a hunting license. That means 93% don't get it. And I understand why they wouldn't get it. And to see me celebrate, go, hell yeah, when I kill an animal seems almost atrocious. I understand that as an animal lover. As an animal lover, I actually get put in both positions because I don't hire my hitman, right? So people who go to the grocery store pay somebody else to kill shit for them, and it's likely that shit that's dying is not dying in a very respectful manner at all, right? But that's okay in their eyes because it's their world, it's their experience. And I get it. I'm not poking them in the ribs or telling them they're wrong. That's just their experience. Well, my experience is that not only do I choose to be my own hitman as a carnivore, because I choose to eat meat, I go out and kill birds, fish, and large game. My freezer's full of elk and not full of cow. I don't buy chicken, I kill chuckers. And those are the things that I take as a protein intake into my body. But on top of it, I'm a deeply intimate animal lover. And most non-hunters would be shocked to hear, and may even not believe me, that almost every hunter I know is a deep lover of animals. And it's paradoxical that we would want to harvest their life, but that's something that's been put in us as a predator. There's a certain portion of the population that were born as predators. There's others that were supports of those. There's hunter-gatherers. There's the home people that took care of, the gardening and did all that stuff. Those are gifts God gave us to kind of have inside of us as an extra, not a missing, right? Mm-hmm. And so with all that being true, there is a large portion of the urban societies today that no longer has the ability, because we're in the third generation here of being separate from the harvest of our own food, right? Our grandfathers, every one of them, if they didn't know somebody who knew how to kill shit, they wouldn't be here right now. So we're just simply 3 generations away from having to intimately see death on a daily basis to put meat in our body. 3 generations later, we literally have people that are so separate from that experience, they just think a chicken magically shows up in a styrofoam wrapper in the grocery store. They don't equate the fact that somebody killed it and gutted it and it was raised to die. Yeah. So, I think my experience is a little more intimate. On top of it, as an animal lover, I don't think it's fair for me with my goats that worked for me for 12 years, worked their guts out, were my companion, for me to ask some vet to come over and give them a shot and kill them, and then I'm going to put them in a hole. It seems super disrespectful. So for my pets, the animals I love, I feed them a bucket of grain, I shoot them in the head, I cut their legs and arms and meat off. I feed my family with it, and I pray over it and thank it for what it did for me, and then I bury it respectfully. So am I bad for doing that? I don't think so. I'm just in touch, right? So that part of me that can be that bridge between animal lovers, urban society, because I get that part because I'm no dum-dum, and then as well, I can get my hunt on and redneck with the rest of them. But at the same time, who's bridging that gap for somebody like you who's a well-thought young man, potentially living in a city and doesn't have a mentor to teach him how to hunt, but has a desire to gather their own meat and not to buy from the grocery store? So I started a company called Hunting University. And it was going to be where I take people, come with me, I'll take you on a hog hunt or a doe hunt where it's low cost. And I can teach you the nuances of how to kill for yourself. And I'll teach you how to butcher, I'll teach you how to shoot, I'll teach you what thing to get. And at least you'll get a start with somebody who can teach you how. And then I'll try to help you launch on your own path to find that wherever you live, right? So, that we have a huge hog and white-tailed doe problem in the United States. We could feed a lot of hungry people if more people just knew how to kill them, right? Mm-hmm. But people like yourself they don't have that mentor, they don't have that buddy, and there is no really online learning program yet. So we hope to do that. at the same time, I'm not money driven anymore, and that takes a lot of work. And and we'll see how well that goes, kind of post COVID, and see if that fire gets lit in me again. I'm sure somebody will do it out there, but currently I'm not aware of a program that can make that possible for people. But I mentor people, so I guess that's possible.
Yeah, I guess regarding your comment about like kind of people that consume meat, but look at the same time look down on hunters, like the hunting community. I always kind of wondered, like a lot of times when people brought that up with me, I always kind of mentioned like, oh, like you're kind of supporting basically if you're shopping at places like Costco or any supermarket, you're supporting like a factory farm type vertically integrated business model. It's like these animals basically live in like Nazi concentration camp type environment, so you can get meat for like $2 cheaper. So you're okay with having them, live a life of misery to basically be able to save $2, on meat, and to have like a meal that just satisfies you for like that 1 or 2 minutes you're eating it, and then you're going to need another meal. But that was like their whole entire life in existence,
Mm-hmm.
And then you tell them like, well, what's the alternative of this wild animal? Like if the hunter doesn't, instantly kill the wild animal, they either get eaten by other animals, which is a pretty brutal way to die, in my opinion, or they just like die of old age in like the wilderness, which is still like a very brutal way to die as well, So it's like their two paths of ending is like not that great, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I always found like once I brought it up like under that vantage point, it's not like there's not much to argue about.
Agree. No, it's well put. And the only thing I'd add to that, because you delineated it really, really well, is that the next level would be then to talk about death in itself. And we have in some ways created death as a negative experience.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of how you look at it spiritually, wherever you look at it, all spiritual contexts celebrate birth and death as equals.
Mm-hmm.
Yet in current society, we've deemed dying as bad, both for ourselves and anything else, because we have a generated society now that's so entrenched in comfort. So how do I always stay comfortable, warm, well-fed, entertained, with the least amount of effort and the most amount of energy gain? How do I do that? Well, problem is that we are evolved based on discomfort. We're not supposed to be comfortable all the time, and we learn from our greatest mistakes and greatest discomforts. 100 years ago, we would have washed our grandparents' body with our own fucking hands, dug the hole, and laid him in there, and probably maybe witnessed the death. And by our ages, we would have witnessed the death of a sibling. We would have definitely witnessed the death of a parent and a grandparent. And we certainly would have had death going around on us on a daily basis because we had to kill a chicken. Right? So we have this where we want it to all happen behind this white door now and have it be all cozy and whatever. Well, death isn't cozy, and it is intended for us to learn from. So that's the only thing I would say to that as well, is Mother Nature is the only one who still hasn't deemed a certain death more worse than another. Yes, she's cruel. She makes animals die in awful ways, but she's doing it the most naturally. We're the ones that are buffering the shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, death definitely completes the life cycle. Without it, basically life stops too, So
Right.
it comes from the soil, and then eventually you lay down on it, and the fungi eat you up, and you go right back into the soil.
Right.
So it's like, and then
Sure.
the cycle continues. And without that part, it's like there is no cycle, thus there is no life. So,
Sure.
So yeah, I kind of forgot what I was going to ask you. I had a question in mind, but you brought up some good points, and I kind of spaced out on it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. What I was going to get down to saying, it's like basically like how long has the Homo sapien been around for? They've been around for about like 200,000 years, and for like 190 of those 1,000 years, they didn't even have like a civilization to settle down in. They were basically living like a nomadic lifestyle, like without like vaccines, medicines, life coaches, nutritionists, personal trainers, or whatever else gurus are out there, and they're all jacked and they're all thriving. And then even if you take out child mortality out of the question, they all lived until like their 50s or 60s, like in full health,
Wow.
And then now it's like even tough to find maybe like a 30-year-old that is able to like do really anything that much impressive with their physique. Or like anytime you walk out in America, like a lot of times like 9 out of 10 people you run into are full of obesity and disease, like full of like mental and physical pain. And it's like, it goes back to like, what is that comfort really producing? It's producing a lot of discomfort and a lot of in a lot of ways as well. So going back to your comment that you mentioned.
No, it's super true. It's super true. You know, I don't know if you know my background. I was nationally competitive in a thing called Train to Hunt, which is really like a Spartan race for bow hunters, right? So, and I competed against Ben Greenfield. You know Ben.
Oh yeah, I've written some articles from.
Yeah, so Ben's a client of mine, good dude. You know, when I was competing with him in the same competitions, I was in my early 40s. I'm 50 now, and he was early 30s. I think I'm exactly 10 or 11 years older than him. And what was really, really shocking to me is that, you know, Ben at that time was going to Hawaii every year and, you know, the triathlons, and he was, you know, literally, you know, nationally competitive in the open class. And I was in kind of the old dude class. I was in the senior class. Now, what was interesting to me is that there was a portion of our competition where it was purely run and, you know, run obstacles and do all that stuff and carry weight and backpacks and rigmarole. Anyway, at that time, I was really starting to struggle with my training because as you age, you just recover less, right? I have to have way more focus on recovery. I'm doing things like yoga. I'm spending 30 minutes stretching. I'm doing all the things that I used to poo-poo just to be able to do what I do today, right?
Yeah,
right?
You're like, now I spend 30 minutes working out and 2 hours recovering from that workout. You know,
totally. You know, and I'm 50 and I still got it. You know, and I stay lean and you know all that stuff. But at the same time, I just can't train as hard as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was going against Ben and I beat him in that competition in terms of time, and I really wasn't like hoorah, or I wasn't excited about that, but I was interested to know why. There's no way I was as strong as he was. There's no way I trained as hard as he did because I can't. There's no way I'm processing nutrition as efficiently as him because I know I'm not. I don't have the endocrine system. I don't have the cellular cycles. I just don't have that. What's the difference? And the difference was grit. It's how much pain am I willing to accept before I tell my muscles, okay, I fucking hear you. You're tired, right? And it's really interesting for me to pay attention to that component of grit, right? I do a lot of walking mountains. I mean, you know, almost 500 miles a year in the backcountry, in my boots, on trails at 9,000 feet plus, taking people in there. And I can take an 80-year-old guy who isn't really fit with tons of grit, and he can kick the ass of a 30-year-old guy who's super fit, who's a wussy. I'm telling you, grit is something that I don't know if we have these discomfort mechanisms going on in our society anymore. They don't happen as naturally. It's almost like we have to manufacture them through sports, right? Mm-hmm. Sports, but there is the emotional, spiritual component with life. I mean, it doesn't matter how sophisticated we get, life kicks our ass. We're using these things like screens and drugs and, you know, mind-altering substances to make us like miss the really beautiful parts of struggle emotionally and spiritually. But physically, we don't have a way to get around it except for to not engage anymore. And we have a larger population that aren't engaging. So I'm wondering where our toughness is going, unless it was just through sports or through things like the military or things, whatever, those things that push us physically. I mean, do you have that one moment that you remember in your life? Mine was I was on a, you know, football two-a-days was the hardest thing I ever did. Then the next hardest thing I ever did was I was on a fishing boat in Alaska in my early 20s, and it kicked my fucking ass for like 6 weeks. And my elevation about what I could actually get through like went up. I didn't realize that I was capable of that much grit until I was forced to, right? So I'm sure you remember that time in your life where you're like, man, that was so hard, but it taught me grit. And I think we're missing those things nowadays.
Yeah, I guess that all started with basically, you know, the government, I think it was like in 1920, trying to aggressively get American males out of the farming lifestyle and into more of like white collar work, you know? So just to kind of boost the GDP basically and all that stuff. And yeah, so obviously when a person doesn't need those skills, the body tries to conserve, you know, energy, the central nervous system tries to conserve its energy and calories and efforts into doing as least as possible to be as efficient as possible. So if a person is just sitting at like a computer all day, all of a sudden they don't need a lot of testosterone, you know? So the body will die down its efforts of producing testosterone, bring it back down, and then obviously then you have a cascade of hormonal effects that don't benefit you aesthetically or physically. Yeah, in regards to that question, I think there's also the environmental factor. Obviously, if you're running around in the mountains all day, and like this person is a gym fitness person, and you're like a mountain person, and they try to probably compete with you in the mountains, they probably won't like last a second. I remember climbing like Mount Hua in central China in 2011, and there's like literally like this 80-year-old Chinese guy that started at the base of the mountain with me, and he was carrying, they're like repairing some temple at the top or something like that, and he was carrying like these huge 5-gallon jugs on his back, like 2 of them, and then like random stuff around his waist. And I just had like some 10-pound backpack with snacks in it, you know? And even he beat me to the top of the mountain. You know? I'm like, man, like I'll surpass him, and then he would overall go slower, but just consistently keep going, you know? And it's like
Interesting.
turtle versus the rabbit or whatever. And I took a picture of that guy. I'm like, man, this guy's a beast, you know? He's like 90, he's like probably like 5'5", like 90 pounds too. I was like,
wow, so
probably
cool.
the bulk majority of his weight was around his beard, and that's about it, you know? I'm like, oh man, I need to go back to the drawing board after this one.
That's really, there's a couple of things that you mentioned there that were super interesting, but one that speaks out to me was it's actually something that I commonly have to like talk with people about, right? Because there is this, I don't know what it is. I guess I did it when I was younger too. When you're climbing a mountain, the best way, I call it my Everest walk, right? I can outwalk anybody and preserve more energy by slowing down and doing a shuffle step walking mechanism up the mountain than that big stride, big step, fast, recover, then do it again, then recover. The other thing that we try to do when we're back there is to not get sweaty. So when and I'm a sweaty dude, so I can just soak everything fast, right? So I will try to keep that heart rate down and that sweaty factor down, just so I'm not soaking my under layers. Because again, I get up on top, then I'm in wind, and I'm trying to glass or do whatever. It's about sweat preservation, but also I can consistently outclimb people in the same way that oil guy did, is just by slowing down and doing a methodical, never give up, never need a break walk. And when I find that pace, that's the right pace, right? So I think that pace is faster for some people, but I consistently find that people that don't use that style have the same struggle that you did. And I'd be curious, if you were to go back and walk with him the very next day, if you just matched his pace, if you would have been able to keep up. I'm super curious about that. I just don't know.
Well, after that, I actually ran into like a method of running called like chi running. This is when I was more into like
chi, as in like CHI.
Yeah, chi running. And it's a very popular technique. I forgot the guru or whatever that teaches this technique, but it teaches you kind of how to relax your body while running, progressively relax more and more. And once I kind of learned that, like endurance events became like a lot easier. Where before I was just using like a lot of like muscle to power through like runs or like tough spots, but actually like he preaches, it's kind of tough to describe in short, but how to relax your body like deeper and deeper the more tired you get, and use like less energy to move forward, but keep moving consistently. It's
interesting.
Like it's pretty interesting. It's like fairly easy to implement once you learn it, and then just get a lot of practice time in. But regarding your topic, I totally forgot the name of the book. It's been like 10 years since I read it, but it was written by a very popular Green Beret that served in Vietnam for like, I don't know, like 5 years straight. He didn't even come home for like 5 years, and he won like the most medals. I forgot the exact Medal of Honor being one of them, but some other medals as well. And no one has won that combination of medals since him. And his responsibility was basically teaching the indigenous Indians in Vietnam to fight against like the communists. And he mentioned like basically all you have to do was teach them how to shoot an M16, because they live like in the mountains on lava rocks their entire life. They can literally like do everything, like run forever, like climb mountains really fast. Like they even had like such like calcified feet that when he would try to like put medicine like in their feet, like inject a needle through their foot, the needle would just break because their feet were like so calcified, and they could just like run super fast on lava rocks without even any shoes.
Wow.
Anyway, so it's just like the importance of kind of like really being like embedded in the environment you're trying to excel in.
Yeah, there's no question. It's just like me. When I get back into the gym after hunting season, I feel like I've lost tremendous ground. but I haven't. I'm just changing how I'm training, so that's, I agree with you. It is, as it is about, kind of what you do on a daily basis and how you do it. And it's, what's interesting too, because you'll find this intriguing. So when I started with pack goats, the saying is that if you're going to go use pack goats, you need to smell the flowers because they're slow. And I can see why the pack goat community thought that before I had been involved, because I was, again, a nationally competitive athlete at that time, and I don't do anything slow, right? I like to be working hard even when I'm walking, right? And so I walk fast. And so my goats drove me crazy that they were slow. So I said, you know what? I got to train these goats. They think they are human. They think I'm a goat. So I'm going to teach them from when they're little that goats walk fast. So I started piddle jogging with them. So I go on runs with my goats once a week. Believe me, it's the funniest looking thing to see me come around the corner with 11 big ass goats with horns running on a trail in Boise. But that's what I do. And so my goats now have an assumption that we're on a trail, we're fast. We walk fast or we run. And, when I put a load on them, then we walk, but we still walk quick. And I was right. It was just a matter of training and keep getting them used to what the pace was that I wanted. And they're awesome. They went from an animal that was genetically engineered to, flee from danger by climbing something that something else couldn't, right? And then fighting it off from above, to an animal that is not geared towards endurance. But, I did a 20-mile day this year with those guys. They packed out 2 bowls with my string. We did 20 miles in a day, and that's just a lot. I don't know if you've ever walked that far in the mountains in one day, but we did like 7,000 feet in game and did 21.6 miles. So, and they did it with me, and nobody was sore, nobody was beat up, everybody was really good, and they were kind of like ready to go the next day. So, but that came from months and months of training in the backcountry and having them be super fit. So fitness matters for them too. It's pretty cool.
That's funny. Like, I wonder what your neighbors say when they like see you running with all these goats. They're like, "Oh, there's Team 666 again,"
That's right.
Again, it's Tuesday,
That's right. Yeah, probably. The apocalypse is on the trail.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out this podcast. If sourcing high-quality food is something you're interested in, but definitely find the subject matter confusing, check out my book on Amazon titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide. It's a very easy and non-technical read that's beautifully illustrated and comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning material. The book, in a very simplified way, breaks down the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. It'll cover how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and many other related topics. Thanks again for checking out the podcast, and when you have a second, please check out Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin on Amazon. Regarding your fitness routine, what's that like? What do you do to keep in shape? Like, because I know, like, with what you're doing, I know for sure you have to keep in shape all year round. It's not like something you could just try to get ready for like 2 weeks before and then everything's going to be okay. So you have to basically take care of yourself for your entire life to be able to do that stuff. So what's your kind of like routine like? Let's start with that, and I'm curious what your diet is like too.
Sure. So I'm one of those guys that at 30 could eat and drink whatever I wanted and never gain a pound, to when I was 40, all of a sudden I went, whoa, it matters what I eat. And now at 50, holy shit, I could put in 10 pounds in bad eating in 30 days. I mean, I'm so susceptible to it. And I'm highly conscientious of fat, not because of how it makes me look aesthetically, but it's 10 more pounds I have to pack up the mountain. So I try to be very lean. I try to be in about the 12% range. That's kind of my sweet spot, where I'm lean enough to where I'm not packing much weight up. I also try to restrict my muscle build. I don't want to be too muscular, because that also is bulky weight and stuff that has to be supplied blood and oxygen. So I try to build myself kind of after that Spartan racing body, but I try to not have a peak, right? Because when you tear yourself down and then rebuild yourself up for a competition, that's a consistent tear down methodology, right? Being competitive innately has a breaking down part of it over time. And it's one of the pieces I had to stop. I had to stop being competitive because I was hurting myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up, my pinnacle moment was rupturing the disc in L4, L5 and having to have back.
My injury.
Yeah.
I think that one's really common though. So
it is. Yeah. So I had to have surgery. I got a lumpectomy and a discectomy, and then I have had stem cell injections, and that helped a lot. But I have a fragile back that I have to be constantly wary of now in posture and everything. And the more weight I carry, the more stress it puts on that. So I don't ever let myself get out of shape, and I don't ever let myself get fat. So how do I do that at 12% body fat and still actually enjoy my life, right? Because I still want to enjoy what I put in my body. I don't want to feel like I'm in deprivation mode all the time. Working out is rewarding. Eating well, it's hard. It's the hard part, right? For me, at least. So in terms of my workout, I do 3 to 4 days a week with an upper lower and then an emphasis on using HIIT training throughout. I do almost very little endurance training. Most of the endurance training I do on mountain bikes so that I'm low impact on my joints.
Okay,
yeah. I do still run, but I'm conscientious not to run too often because I can feel the difference on my body overall and wear and tear versus when I bike. But I know I need that small stabilization muscle in my feet and my knees. And, I need to have that core fitness to take that jar. So I can't just ignore it, but I don't want to use it as a cornerstone of my fitness. So I do my endurance training on a bike. I supplement with a little bit of running, and then I lift. And when I lift all functional fitness, multi-joint movements, right? So I'll still do full-blown squats. I'll still do some light, some heavy. I'll do slow movement. I don't really do any explosion movements anymore because, again, those movements, my spine surgeon had a really good piece of wisdom. He said, Mark, in your exercise routine, the word explosion shouldn't exist anymore. You just can't do that stuff. But I can do things like peacock in yoga. I can do moves that only very advanced yoga people can do because my core, I've worked super hard to make sure it's there to support it. So I'll do push-pull routines. So I'll do a lot of push and then pull and push and then pull. And then I'll do a HIIT train. And I'd be pretty repetitious with my HIIT train because I like the grit of it and I like the duration of it. So if I'm going to try to blast out something that's going to create cardiovascular fitness for me, I'm going to try to get as most in the short amount of time as I can. So I do the 90% effort for 1 minute and then 50% effort for 1 minute for 10 cycles. And it is easily the hardest thing I do. And I do it on the stair climber because the stair climber is the hardest sweat in the gym to me. So I will run. If you run a stair climber, it has like 0 through 20. Most of them do as a setting. I'll put it on 20 for a minute. So I'm running the stair climber. Then I'll back it down to 10 where I'm walking fastly while I recover. Then I go up to 20 again. And again, I do just 10 minutes of that. That's the hardest thing I do in the gym by a mile. That takes so much grit. It's so flipping hard. And every hunting season, I lose some ground and then I recover throughout the year. And I pay attention to my standing heart rate. And it usually goes when I'm out of shape, it'll go for 164. When I'm at full blast, barely recovering. And then I'll drop down to like 156, 157 is where when I know I'm starting to get to the level of VO2 max and fitness that I'm looking for. So that's like my measurement stick of my ability to transmit and process sugars and, cellular recovery and the use of oxygen. That's like my little measuring stick. And then on the dietary level, I have found a home in this system to stay lean. And I use a cheat day on Wednesday night and I cheat on Saturday. I have a moderate protein, high fat on all the remaining days with almost an absence of carbs. So I'll take in maybe max 40 to 50 carbs. It's kind of an intermittent keto, but not really because I never really quite get there. I always stay right on the cusp. I blood tested. I did 6 months of keto. It was so restrictive. I hated eating 8 items and it just wasn't long-term sustainable. So for me, I eat super strict Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at dinner. I'm going to have ice cream. I'm going to have spaghetti. I'm going to have whatever I want so I can feel human again. Then I'm really regimented up till Saturday. Saturday, I get up, I make pancakes and I make muffins, and then I have a burger at lunch, and I have whatever the frick I want at dinner. And then Sunday, I'm right back on my routine. And I'm a 50-year-old guy that's ripped and fit and stay light, and I still feel like I can give to myself. But if I get more restrictive than that, then I blow my program. And my program is really relying on fitness and food. If my food falls off, my fitness falls off. If my fitness falls off, my food falls off. They have to be together to really function well. So that's my system.
Yeah, and that's great to hear that you're like 50 and still in like really good shape. I hate when like people come up to me and they say like, oh, like after 30, like it's impossible to lose fat, or after 40, it's impossible to lose body fat. I'm like, no, man, that's not how it works. It's like actually pretty damn easy to do if you're like living a health conscious lifestyle,
Sure.
and like semi
sure.
taking care of yourself, not even being like ultra disciplined. If you're
Sure.
ultra disciplined, then it's like still easy to be like pretty ripped even in the old age. I
It
mean,
is.
guys like Paul Check, I think he's like pushing 60 now, still deadlifting like 3 plates on each side for like reps, and he's like super ripped,
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, it's possible for sure.
well, how's your lifestyle like? Um, do you have like other forms of work outside of doing the hunting company plus the pack coat, blah blah blah.
Pack goats.
Back
Yeah.
coat. Sorry, those two words kind of flow into each other, man.
They do. Yeah. No worries. So I've been a lifelong time seeker over a money seeker. I retired early in life, before 2008 and 9. That economy, when it flipped upside down, I saw my net worth evaporate. I had to start over again. So I built a second company after that. Now I'm resting on the laurels of that success. I'm not retired. I still work hard. But despite building, really I actually started over 3 times. And the most recent time was just a couple of years ago when I ruptured my disc and got a divorce in the same year. And, that was like a do-over because, she kind of got everything, and willingly. She's not a turd. I felt it was my duty to take care of her. I had to start over again. So for me, time and money and lifestyle are all they're synchronized. And I wrote a best-selling book way back in the day called Oh No, and it's like a book called Options, Not Obligations, because that's how I've always lived my life. I always want to get up every morning and ask myself, what do I want to do? Oh, cool, I want to work today. I want to flourish and create abundance. Or what do I want to do? Okay, today I want to go hunt pheasants, or I want to golf, or I want to go play with my kids. So I want a life surrounded with options. And the only way to do that is to not have money dictating my future, right? So for me, it was about figuring out how to have life work for me that way. So I decreased my need for consumption. I increased my ability to produce income. And I broke the rule that told me I had to work all the time, right? Why is that a rule? I don't have to work all the time. I can actually consume less, make more money in a shorter period of time, do what I want. So since I was 22 years old, I've taken 6 months off a year every single year of my life. I've never worked more than 6 months. And that's been what's created one hell of a photo album, a lot of deep relationships, a ton of personal growth, and the things that matter. So I wrote in my book at that time, I say, what am I trying to really do? Right? When I walk this earth, what am I trying to achieve? And I said, well, what's the human measure of achievement? And so I thought about that, and I thought, well, what somebody reads about you when you die, your eulogy, is probably a pretty good measure of what you did, right? When your brother or your mother or your child or your best friend reads, this is who Marc was, what would that say? And then can I actually engineer my life to pre-write that for me, right? If I want to have a life that is written in a certain way, well, why don't I start right now, right? So what I recognized is that in eulogies, they never mention the size of the house you live in, how much money is in the bank, what kind of car you drive, and what you do for work. No, it never fucking even gets talked about. So why do we spend 8 to 10 hours a day in our whole entire adult life pursuing something that we're never even going to talk about in the most poignant moment of human existence? It's fucking stupid. So for me, I just said, I don't want to do that. I
Mhm.
want to have memories. I want to have relationships. I want to grow. I want to evolve. I want to meet interesting people and see the world and do all that. And if you think that's lazy, well, I don't give a shit. I don't think it's lazy. I work harder than anybody I know, playing or working.
Mhm.
So, I just, I wasn't willing to do it by the way people told me. And so lifestyle, every morning and I decide what I'm going to do that day. Am I going to go have fun or I'm going to create abundance? And today I got up this morning and said I'm going to create abundance. And as a result of the work that I did today, I decided to go on a Belize bone fishing trip in 2 weeks because I can, and not because I'm a lucky member of the sperm club, not because daddy gave me a bunch of money. I was raised
I got
poor
to
as
Google
shit.
sperm club now. See what comes up. Probably nothing too great.
Well, I call it
Save
the
that for
lucky.
after the video.
I call it the lucky sperm club when you inherit your wealth, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't begrudge either. Good for those people.
Yeah.
Do something great with your life. But I wasn't given money. I had to create it myself. I'm not all that in a bag of potato chips. I just had a clear path from a young age and knew what I wanted, and that was time. I wanted to buy my time by not working.
No, that's totally admirable. And actually, even to this day, I run into very little people that are in that mindset. I had that
Right.
kind of thought pattern when I finished college as well. Um, Before college, I was just going to get like a normal job, like going to corporate office, et cetera, et cetera. But then I was actually personal training still part time though, just like 10 hours a week or something through college, just because it was like flexible hours and I enjoyed doing it and it was like interesting. But one thing I've noticed is like, man, working with people after you've seen them be in like a corporate environment for like 20 or 30 years, it's just the amount of like mental and physical pathology that arises in most of them. I was like, man, that's not like a life I want because I feel it doesn't even provide you with the physical security that you typically would go into that occupation to acquire. Like a lot of people would go in
Mhm.
there for the consistent paycheck or like medical benefits or whatever, or social prestige. But I feel like at the end of the day, it's kind of like all those people just developed a lot of health problems, or a lot of like physical and mental health problems as well. And I feel it really doesn't in the long term even provide you with that security for the most part. I'm sure it fits well with some personalities, but I don't think it's just like a good environment for like the bulk majority of people. I just don't think people should be living that way.
Sure, sure. And you're right. There are some people that are a natural fit to that. But do you have children?
No, no kids.
Yeah. No, so you'll see your children will make you a superhero that can do anything. And if that anything is that you see that the best path towards financial security and safety for them is to log your hours in a cubicle, you'll do it. Right? So there's been points in my life where I've drifted from that to be things to people that are people and places and entities that are bigger than me that I have a calling towards. And I think in some ways our society has been really driven to create an expectation of how we go about that to create safety and security. And some people just don't have that reference point to know that those things are even an option, right? If you're raised by a dad who spent 30 years and went from bagger to running the grocery store, then that's likely what you're going to see as your potential path as well. And so I really get what you're saying. At the same time, I have the same level of respect for the grit and resolve. In fact, maybe more so for that guy that's willing to saddle up to that for his wife and for his kids. He's a fucking superhero. That's hard. That's really, really hard. Um, Maybe my life choices gave me some few more options and that sort of thing. But I'm certainly, if anything, he's got more grit than me. I just made, I'm also a recovering alcoholic. I got sober at like 22, so I've been sober like, long time now, 28 years. And often a lot of people, because I'm fairly open to share about it, I don't have any shame or embarrassment or any of that sort of thing. And so I'll say, that, and a lot of people are like, hell yeah, dude, way to go. And I'm like, if you really knew, it was just because I was a wussy. I couldn't take the pain of being an alcoholic. I mean, one of the blessings of being an alcoholic is that it rears your head in your life and it makes it so fucking unbearable that you really only have three choices: die, go to jail, or fucking get sober. I mean, it's really like the only three. The eventuality, you're going to arrive at one of those three places if you're a long-term alcoholic. And I couldn't take the mediocrity of life. I couldn't take knowing that I could be doing better. I couldn't take feeling like I had to say sorry to somebody because I was a drunk idiot the night before. The lower level stuff got me before I had to ruin a house and lose my fortune and, you know, ruin my marriage or whatever because I was a drinker. So when people say good on you, well, okay, yeah, I took the step. I could be the guy with a, you know, sign in my hand on the grocery store corner too. I could have made that choice. I mean, I know what the gutter smells like. I know what it looks like. I've been there. I didn't choose to stay there, but it was really because I just couldn't take it. I couldn't take life sucking that much, you know. So when I see some guy saddle up to that, I got props for them. That's hard. That's hard. It's hard to dig a fucking ditch for 30 years. That's hard. You know, what I'm doing is kind of easy. I just got another path.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess there's always kind of like if it's like one thing you have to do to reach like a greater goal, you could look at it that way. I always kind of looked at it like sometimes like, oh, you know, like, of course, like it's something you can do, but I find like sometimes like people use their kids as an excuse to stay in that path because they're too afraid to try anything. So they always use it's because I have kids. That's why I don't want to try anything else. But in reality, the truth is just they're too afraid to try something else. So they kind of hide behind the objective reality, which is true. You know, kids need money, they need time, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like sometimes it could be used like as a scapegoat, you know?
So can tons of things. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. But you'd be surprised. I think you'll see that, you know, there's a form of human evolution that can only occur when we are willing to surpass the largest human instinct, which is self-preservation, right? The first order of business is to keep me alive every single day. And when you present me with the opportunity to die or live, it's always going to be live, right? So that's the highest thing in hierarchy of human needs, is to keep existing. But yet a child is so special that it's the one entity that walks the planet that almost universally we would give up our lives for as our own child. That's fucking magic. There's something extra there. There's something in the evolutionary process as human beings that we can only achieve when we experience parenthood. Parenthood's like kind of like the final stage. I mean, they talk about this hierarchy of human events that form us. The death of a child is the highest level of mourning, right? I mean, you lose a child. I understand how that could wreck you the rest of your life. I get it. Right? That's awful. I can't imagine it. You know, so yeah, children are something that are 6 billion times as amazing. And I'll tell you, I was a 51-49. I was 51% against having kids and 49 for it. And my wife, you know, I chose to do it to support her, and I knew it was a choice of self-sacrifice. And I didn't really know if I wanted to self-sacrifice that much. I kind of like doing what I wanted to do all the time, you know? So I get why people wouldn't have them. And at the same time, I'm so glad I did, because I couldn't have evolved without it.
Gotcha. Well, how do you manage with your active outdoor lifestyle? And are your kids older now, or like what age are they?
I have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old.
Okay, so still like pretty young. Do you take them on? Do you take them on the trips with you and stuff like that? Or
yeah, Jakin, my older son, is my camp cook. He likes packing in with me. He kind of, you know, he's actually going to be probably running his own trips this next year. He's a stud. He's just that kid that hit the ground and already knew where he should be going when he was little. I mean, he's smart, and he's hardworking, and he's honest, and he's just got it going on. And then my younger son, he's got that different spirit where he kind of gets bounced around in life, and he and I have a harder time relating, right? I don't love him any less or any more, and he and I have a deep connection. But he's also in that 12-year-old stage of, you know, being hormonal, and kids are cooler, and he's also been really, really fucking hammered by COVID. This whole COVID shut him in, put him in front of a screen. In some ways, he's like lost himself to a screen now. It's like it's this really, I'm really, you know, I have a hard time really not being angry about what we've done to modern society to make our kids so scared to go outside that they're now parked in front of a screen 8 hours a day. It's just been devastating for my youngest son. I think some kids have been adaptive to it. But man, I don't know. I've just literally seen him in a short period of time be a different human being now, and not, and he's really struggling with it. So it's really hard for me to see that. And I'm sure you can sense my energy. I'm just super frustrated with the feeling like I don't know what to do. That there's nothing worse than that for an A-type personality who pretty much has A, B, C, and D in place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to fucking start right now with that stuff. It's like the screen has him. It's really a hard thing. It's a phenomenon that's across the country right now, and it's not being talked about. But there's a lot of parents that just don't know what to do right now.
What state do you live in?
Idaho.
Idaho, gotcha. Are you guys like all on lockdown now, or what are the rules?
No, we're in fact, people have sports here in Idaho. They'll come here for like wrestling tournaments and stuff like that because we're one of the states that's actually allowing for the most freedom. So our restaurants are open, but the kids are still, the government's the government. So the government has them all shut down still because that's what the CDC says. So in terms of our entrepreneurial spirit and our business in line, thank God we're thumbing our nose at the people who want us to be so scared of this stupid shit. But the kids are still super subjected to it, and they are being forced to bow to the will of this fear stuff. And as a result, their educations are being harmed, their personalities are being harmed, and their ability to build new friends or keep ones are super low. And kids are made to play with kids. It's a hard place to be right now. It's really hurting kids.
Gotcha. So are you living like kind of in like a semi off-grid kind of setup, or do you live like somewhere on the outskirts?
No, I live close to the city. I'm kind of on the edge, and I have 2 acres. I have 20 goats. I milk 6 gallons a day. I sell milk to my neighbors, and I have chickens, and I have what you would consider an urban farm. I mean, I'm known by both professionally and by my community as the goat guy. So, I'm just the goat guy. And, because people don't know even what a goat is anymore. They just don't. I mean, it's how far away we've gotten from our agricultural roots. Even here in Idaho, I'll walk around the corner and people will ask me this constantly, if you can imagine. They'll say, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's a goat." Really? You don't know what a goat looks like? It's a goat, right? There literally is a large portion of society, when shown a goat in front of them, is not sure if it's a goat or not, which I just find so amazing. But I guess, if it's existing, then it is. But yeah, so I live on the edge of the city, and luckily, we have a very conservative kind of small town feel in our city. And Boise's the capital, so I'm in the biggest city in Idaho, but it's still Idaho. It's not San Francisco.
Gotcha. Well, are you currently offering any tours for the pack goats, or are there any rules or restrictions on that?
No. I work through outfitters in the area, so I actually am the guide. I'm not the outfitter. But no, clients can book trips with me. I would say that I'm not cheap. I'm kind of expensive, but again, I think that every single person, and I wish I could make it more affordable. I literally am only willing to sacrifice so much of that personal, super deeply personal time that I have in the backcountry, which, if you think about it, I can't get into the high country until like late June, early July. And then hunting season starts September 1. So that means I have 8 weeks, 8 weeks to do what I'm like most love. So if I give away 3 of those 8 weeks to clients, to me, it has to be high value, right? So, it costs, minimum $4,000 and usually $4,000 to $8,000 to go with me on a 3 or 4 day trip. But we feed you great food. You're going to see country like you've never seen before. The campfire talk isn't tough guy talk. It's real talk. And I have still yet not to have people, I take photography while I'm on the trip. I build people this beautiful book to remember it by. And consistently, the families that I take, their comment is it's the best family trip we've ever been on. I mean, I don't know where you could go for 4 or 5 days anywhere on a trip with your family of 4 people and have it cost less than $5,000 or $6,000 anyway. So might as well come with me. Put your screens away, put your gadgets away, and and come start kind of rebirthing yourself in the woods through, through fishing and being in high mountain lakes and beautiful places and working hard. And, we do a lot of miles, and you don't have to be super fit because we can gear the trip towards people. But yeah, I'll, especially with my son taking more of this on, that'll let me help to price it down a little bit and make it more available to folks. And yeah, we'll be doing a lot of trips this year. So yeah, you bet. And they can get a hold of me at patgoats.com.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we'll list that in the description for anyone that's interested.
Cool.
I meant to ask you earlier, it's kind of like a little bit of parallel or perpendicular transition here. What do you think of like, you're very into, I watch like a lot of your videos, like getting in touch with your animals, their different personality types, like little things they like and don't like, and then just the general theme of just being in touch with nature or just one with the universe in general and being part of that instead of like a separate entity from that. That's just taken from it. What's your take on the future direction of how like humanity is evolving and kind of what direction that's going to take?
So, sorry, my pause is because I was checking in to see if I'm willing to share. So I have been now seeking additional growth through the use of hallucinogenic therapy, things like ayahuasca and psilohuasca and those sorts of things. And I have now found kind of that pinnacle element. I've been a lifelong grower, and I can say that without question that some parts of my mission has changed as a result of those interactions and doing those ceremonies, because now it's about the ability to positively influence people through love. And I know that sounds corny as heck, but that's where it is. And my interactions on a daily basis are rooted in love and being kind. And if I can be patient, kind, and loving, as a result, it sets a tempo and a temperament for the circle around me, which then sets that for the next circle around them. And I think the more people that become conscious of the fact that we are needing some sort of shift that involves kindness, that involves love, and that requires patience, the more people that are affected positively in that way, the more cumulative change we'll make on planet Earth. So energetics are such a part of that. So I was always aware of energy because in my family of origin, to survive, I was raised in 7 marriages, divorces, and lots of dysfunction. For me to survive, I had to be really tuned in on who was mad at each other, what to anticipate was the next dangerous event that was going to happen in my home as a kid. And so I became really tuned into energy. I don't think I ever recognized it as being energy until like my early 20s, when I was in the public speaking realm and I was selling, and I could collectively sense people's energy and give it back and move it in the direction it needed to for me to be able to close the deal or do whatever. I became conscious of energy then. But when I sit in these ceremonies, to know that there is an energy that flows through all of us that we communicate, and the animals, I got a chance to talk to a world-renowned medium in that environment. And I got to ask her a question I've always wondered, which is the soul and the spirit the same thing? And her answer to that, and then this is a lady who has TED Talks and stuff. She's the real deal, right? And she said, a dog has a soul, a goat has a soul, a cat has a soul, and we have a soul. And our souls are what collect past experiences and then remind us to not repeat the same error. But it's much closer related to the human part of us. Our spirit is what is in us, that is the divine entity, the divine light, connected and a part of whatever you want to call the spirit, God, the Holy Spirit, whatever you choose. And it's the divine being that's inside of us. And they're two different things. And our spirit speaks to us by making us deeply curious about the future. And so when we become really curious about something, that's our spirit saying, you should be going and looking in this direction. This is the path for you to make the next evolutionary step while you're here. And your soul's the one poking you in the ribs saying, dude, you did that last time. Remember that shit? Remember how it went? Remember how it felt? Don't do it again. Right? So what I'm choosing to try to do now collectively with energy is pay attention to the spirit and what direction I'm supposed to be going. As far as animals go, they certainly have energy, and I can sense it. I can sense the difference between male and female energy. I can sense the difference between self-serving and selfless energy. All those things have collective energy. And if we were all able to kind of walk the planet at once and embody love, kindness, and patience, all of a sudden that would be an elemental shift in human beings that happened at once. And so I'm really invested in my little piece of that. That's why I chose to speak to you about that. It runs risk for me to be judged for what I do and how I'm doing it. And in some ways I don't give a shit. I don't care. I want to be helpful. I want to have other people, lead better lives and do what they need to do, but only because they bounced into me, not because I became something any more significant than somebody that they bounced off of, right? In a loving, kind, and patient way. So, and again, I say all that saying I am the number one offender to fall down in that mission on a daily basis. I can be tyrannical. I can be critical as shit. My past life speaks for me in lots of ways that I wish it never did. That scared little kid's still scared of being criticized, and he still knows how to be a piece of shit to people and make them feel bad. But that doesn't mean I'm not hyper aware of it now and really own it and admit it and embody it and try to go back to what I know to be true for me today, which is to be kind, loving, and patient. So in terms of energetics and the flow of that, animals are part of that flow, humans are part of that flow, and the collective energy. I mean, I just literally had to turn off the TV. I was curious what happened in the elections, but I literally could feel the negative energy bleeding into my body, and I felt myself turning grumpy. And I said, okay, that's it. Shit's turning off. Our major mass media sources have nothing for us but negative energy, make us scared, bow at the will of the sponsor, so we watch the next commercial, and I ain't playing, and I hope other people don't play.
Yeah, cool. Well, it was great to meet you, man. I enjoyed our short talk, I don't know, a few months ago. I forgot exactly when, so I appreciate you doing that one and then getting on the show to do this podcast as well.
My pleasure. Yeah, make sure you let me know when it gets out. I'll put it out there.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Mark. Do you have any closing statements or any other projects you're working on that you want people to know about?
Well, I think it's important for people to know that as a hunter, that there's the right way and the wrong way to do that. We're invested in conservation. There's no people that donate more time, money, and energy to the conservation of animals. I would challenge people in the general sector to challenge and really think about their own beliefs that they've been told by somebody else how bad we are, and go out and go hunting yourself with somebody from heart, which is 99% of us. Unfortunately, hunters as a whole are like anybody else, Christians, politicians, bodybuilders, whatever it is. It's always the jackass that gets paid attention to. It's always the jackass that gets held up as who then represents that group, because it's what the media wants to point you at that is representative. And it's the same with hunters. The guy who does it wrong is the one who gets the press, and he certainly isn't representative of our group. So I would kind of challenge your non-hunting viewership to challenge themselves to think about the difference between eating a chicken and going out and hunting a pheasant, which is more honorable, and challenge that for yourself as well. And then the last thing is to know that, yes, I own packgoats.com, and it's a blessing and a great business, and I love it, but I'm also a lifelong hunting consultant. And so people that want to call me and go on their first elk hunt or their first deer hunt, I'm the guy you call to make sure you're with a good outfitter in the right place, and I can help to guide you through that entire process. That's what I've done most of my professional life is a hunting consultant, and my fee to my clients is free, and the outfitter pays me as a referral fee, so I'm like a free advocate, free service to the clients who call me, and that company is called Top End Adventures. But if you Google anything to do with pack goats, you're going to find me. If you Google me, you'll find my Top End Adventures as well. I'm really, I have a YouTube channel on both, and I make short films in the hunting industry. I'm releasing a new one now that is a bear hunting film that will challenge most people's belief about how amazing bear hunting can be when done with a heart like I do it. So I think people would like that too.
Cool. And I really like their channel with the pack goats. So I probably watched almost every video on that one. So I appreciate putting the work into that. They're actually pretty entertaining. You'd be surprised. Some people are
Cool.
probably listening like, oh, he's just hanging out with goats. And it's like, but it's like the way you narrate it and explain it, it's like, it makes it like very entertaining. So,
Wow, I'm glad you think so. I'm glad. Good.
cool.
Thanks.
Thank you, man. Thank you again. And have a good weekend. Okay.
Yep. Thanks. Bye bye.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.